Our next presenter will be Krista Gardner. The topic is when to outsource your organization's financials. Krista is a member of the firm who joined SEK in 2020. She has 18 years of experience. She graduated from Susquehanna University with a bachelor's in accounting, minor in information systems. She has worked exclusively with the government and nonprofit clients her entire career. She currently leads our outsource solutions service line, and she lives in York with her husband, Elliot, son, Cohen, daughter, Zoe, and two Westies, Oliver and Piper. Krista, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Christina. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to take just a few minutes this morning and really talk about the accounting industry and its effects on the governmental organizations, not just near us, but nationwide. It's no surprise. We've heard in many different outlets and different media sources that the accounting industry has really been impacted in a generational shift. And the demand for accountants is far exceeding the supply of accountants, as we've seen a huge exit in our older generation in accountants, both public and in private industry. And the government industry is definitely a part of this and feeling it even a little bit more than some other industries. On the slide here I have from the Journal of Accountancy, 56% of government finance professionals have cited compensation as a major hiring and retention barrier. And then 63% cite that specialized expertise required for governmental accounting as a significant hiring challenge. So essentially, we've got two trends going the opposite direction, where we need those that have a specialized skill set or expertise, yet the pay and benefit package often works against us in that area. Moving to the next slide to kind of dig in a little bit to really that impact on local governments. So the competition for accountants is high. As we said, supply does not meet demand. And it's even greater when we talk about government accounting. Unfortunately, going into local government accounting is not a natural pathway out of college for most accountants. Typically, it's going to be that public accounting or private, which is usually focused on the for-profit side of things with a little bit of nonprofit and government under that. And it really just stems from, there's not a lot of governmental accounting and exposure that students are getting during their time in college for accounting. And so although, local governments are struggling to compete with these other industries, and honestly for-profit, but even nonprofits, when it comes to salary and benefit packages, as we all know, the complexities of our local governments has continued to increase over the years. The expertise needed to, fully handle that accounting position or the accounting department and pieces needed are specific and complex, related to all the funding sources we deal with, the grants, fund accounting, allocations across different funds or grants resources, and then even restricted funds, and being able to track those and having those understanding of, the due to, due froms and the interfund transactions. It's more complex, and it's something that's not often taught a lot in school. And so we're already kind of going against the grain when it comes to those coming out of school and trying to find that natural pathway into local governments. So then how that has, really kind of weaved into general staffing constraints, as we've heard throughout some of our presentations, our local governments typically have a smaller staff size, and we know that governments can't exist without people. There's a lot of services that are provided in local governments that depend on people. And usually in that finance department or accounting department, whatever they're called, the bookkeepers, they end up wearing multiple hats. And so a lot of things kind of get thrown in that finance area, which then also is hard to replace a person when they leave, because when you put together the job description of what that person is doing, it's finance and accounting plus, 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 plus. And so it can be very difficult to find someone to essentially get in the door to recruit people for accounting. And then also, with retaining staff, typically there is, an issue with salaries, where when we're competing with other organizations that are a for-profit or even a nonprofit, often that salary constraint gets in the way. And so if we can recruit them, it's usually hard to retain them because there are other opportunities that are popping up there as multiple industries are seeing this lack of accountants coming in out of school. Benefit costs are also something that, even if we could afford a higher paid position with the skill set that we need, then when you add on the benefit package, which is traditionally more expensive in the government world, it really hinders the ability to bring in someone because that total cost to the budget is going to be more than the government can subsidize. So then that takes us to, on the next slide, really how can outsourcing help solve this problem? Working with an outsourced CFO and accounting team allows your organization to have access to the financial expertise you need without necessarily having to hire that individual full-time. As we talked about, those salary and benefit expenses can get really high. And in a lot of cases, you don't need that skill set 100% of the time. So it's really kind of supplementing. So in addition to potentially some payroll cost savings for a lot of local governments that have gone the way of outsourcing part of their accounting team or like their CFO, director of finance level, it allows you to kind of right size what you need. And so it's kind of this cost sharing approach where, hey, we need this skill set, but we only need it for, half of the amount of time of a full-time person. And so I often talk about this where, okay, we've got one bucket of money as a local government. And so we can spend that bucket of money on an in-house employee that has some of the skills that we need, or we can use those same funds and spend that on an outsourced team that has the skill sets. It's multiple individuals. It's a bench of people for your team. It's more of that cost sharing approach where essentially, okay, we need the accounting team for 20 hours a week, and now you can cost share with other local governments. The other thing that helps in this too is when you're outsourcing to like a local firm, the resources that they have available really help in creating efficiencies for local governments that you don't necessarily have the ability to really obtain or capitalize on being a local government. On the next slide, then, we'll get into, and there's a poll that just came up, if you want to grab that, really some of the benefits of outsourcing. So access to an expert in your industry that really understands your organization. As we talked about, governments are complex, so they are unique. It is hard to find someone that understands those complexities, and that even goes state by state. Maryland local governments are very unique compared to Pennsylvania local governments. And so being able to work with a team that has an understanding, whether it's from an audit background or working with multiple local governmental entities of varying sizes, really can help kind of bring that skill set and expertise. It's really nice because being able to outsource, although it's not an employee, you now have this relationship with a team. Again, it's a bench of skill sets that are now a part of your team and are really working on your goals. So, the priorities, whatever the organization has coming up, whether it's a big building project or putting together a capital plan or adding on a whole new, service that is being provided. Maybe it's, some kind of reorganization of fire or police services. You have that expertise to kind of help you through that process. And other times, things come up, whether it's someone on your staff that maybe is the person who processes payroll needs to be out on medical leave for a couple of weeks. Having an outsourced team, you usually have someone that can easily fill in for that position without any gap in service. And most importantly is having the right skill sets and creating efficiencies and making your processes as effective as possible will then result in timely and accurate financial information, meaningful dashboards and data, and then also allowing others in the organization to spend more time on what they do best. So if we think about our boards at each of our organizations, they're making decisions based on financial information. And I know a lot of us have experience where maybe the information isn't quite correct, meaning when it comes to audit time, you've got a lot of journal entries, or maybe it's not timely because you've got someone who's wearing way too many hats and it is a lot to keep up with. So having more timely and accurate information is going to be, crucial for making those decisions, making better decisions, and also understanding the information. So having that team that really can translate what the financial information, means to those that are making those decisions. And then, as I said, allowing others to spend time. So really kind of saying, okay, the accounting piece, the bookkeeping piece, the financial piece, getting that out of the way of those that are spending their time doing the services, the programming, the other pieces of the governmental entity to kind of get that out of their way. Some examples of what outsourcing can look like, because this is what I get all the time is I understand what outsourcing is, but how does that even apply to a local government? And it's definitely become a more common theme, I think, in our area here in Pennsylvania and even in Maryland and beyond. So a vacant role. So this can be a temporary or a permanent capacity, as well as in assisting in role transitions and necessary training. We've had instances where we actually step in a temporary capacity, and then it ends up just becoming permanent because it works that way. We've had instances where someone's retiring and they've said, you know what, we've thought about like, can we just outsource this position rather than bringing in an employee, like bringing in an in-house employee and kind of shifting around some organizational responsibilities. Whether it's coming in that capacity full time or like filling a role, it also can be supplemental. So coming in at specific times where you really need that higher level expertise and guidance. So that could be budgeting, whether it's coming in and assessing your current process and offering suggestions, or really running the entire budget process with your team. Audit preparation and management is a big one that often outsourced accountants will come in and assist local governments with. Same thing with financial statement preparation, cash flow forecasting and assessing current needs. This goes right hand in hand with whether you've got a big project that's coming up and you're funding it through different grants and tax increases and what that cash flow is going to look like. If it's a project that's going to be multi-year, how you kind of plan that out. Is there going to be financing that needs to be done? Providing guidance on essentially how to maximize the current assets of the local government, really kind of looking at it and saying, okay, do we have a reserve policy for fund balance? Are we setting money aside? How are we calculating that amount? Is it X number of months of general operating expenses? And then where are those funds sitting? Are we making sure that we're able to, as little risk as possible, but make as much money on those funds as we can? And essentially, a lot of times we're kind of those financial translators coming in and working with key stakeholders to review financial information and what essentially it means for the organization, now and going forward as you kind of prepare for what comes next over the next 5 to 10 years for your local government. And then on the next slide, so that's essentially it. We do have just a short video. This is, it'll speak about nonprofit, but it's very similar in the government world. Kind of a little video that we put together that we use to kind of just do a quick illustration of, what it really means to outsource for your organization in the CFO and accounting role.
Meet Jane. Her nonprofit was growing fast, but managing grants, budgets, reporting, and audit preparation took precious time away from the mission. With SEK Outsource CFO and accounting solutions, you get experienced financial leadership when and how you need it. We know that managing your organization's finances can be complex, and hiring a full-time CFO isn't always practical. SEK helped streamline her accounting, develop meaningful reporting, and provided strategic insights related to cash flow, forecasting, and budgeting, allowing Jane to focus on impact, not invoices. Let us handle the numbers so you can change the world.
All right, that's all I have. Thanks, everyone.